Hello my friends, this is Ian and welcome to today's video. This is episode 8 or prompt 9 of Inktober, and the prompt today was precious. And for this prompt I went with an environmental design. I was having a lot of difficulties coming up with an idea for precious that I liked. I had lots of different ideas, lots of different thoughts came to mind, but none of them particularly gripped me. There was nothing there that made me go, yeah, I really want to draw that. And I know from experience that entering into a picture, even when you don't have any particular draw to it, you tend to rush through it and kind of end up with something crap. So instead, I kept fiddling around with ideas in my sketchbook until, after playing around with some loose sketches of geodes and crystals and things, I got to remembering that there is in Mexico this cave of enormous crystals at the bottom of a mine. They accidentally mined into it, and it's one of the most incredible places on this planet. Just this cave filled with these enormous crystals growing out of the wall, and it's impossible to go into this cave without some kind of suit protection because it's so hot and there's so much moisture in the atmosphere and there's so many just bad things. You have to go in a full-on environment suit with your own. You have to take an environment with you just to enter into this place, and it's really, really cool. And I kind of got an itch to draw an environment based loosely on that. Some kind of, maybe an alien environment, maybe some cave somewhere with some explorers entering it for the first time and studying the environment. But ultimately in this cave filled with enormous crystals forming just straight out of the wall. Meanwhile, I'd have these two figures stood at the bottom, dwarfed by these crystals, either looking aghast at the sheer scale of this environment, or actually what I ended up doing, which was having them almost completely ignoring the environment around them and being entirely focused on something tiny on the ground in front of them. I really enjoy that because it makes you want to know, what is it that these people are looking at? What's so interesting about this tiny thing on the floor that you're ignoring this incredible place that you're in? And that sort of adds into the precious theme as well. What is precious? It comes down to an individual's own idea of what is precious. And these people might be thinking that this tiny speck of whatever on the ground, this is more precious than these enormous crystals. Maybe it's life. Maybe they found some kind of life in this cave. And suddenly these huge crystals, that's not so interesting anymore. I had a lot of fun adding in all the details on this piece, both in the sketching phase and the line work phase. I just kept adding more and more little features, like the rocks and boulders on the floor to the different crystals coming in and out of the walls, and even the ceiling, the stalagmites and stalactites, and all these things I kept going back and adding to. I think I could have possibly achieved a better look with some of the crystals, especially where they join onto the walls. I have them either just sort of disappearing into them or actually appearing to break through the wall in some places, which isn't really how crystals form, but I was struggling to try and find a nice way of attaching them to the wall or making them appear like they were growing out of the wall. I think for the most part it works, but certainly if I was to come back and redraw this environment or build upon this world further, then I'd certainly try and figure out exactly how these crystals are forming out of the wall, or whether or not they maybe they were placed there. Maybe this is some kind of alien structure. These crystals have been mined out somewhere else and then brought into this cave and arranged in this pattern, perhaps. Who knows? I think I prefer the idea that it is natural, and certainly that's how I was drawing it. I even used a slightly more jagged approach to adding in the details in the background of the walls, just to emphasize the idea that maybe the walls themselves are also encrusted in these diamonds or these crystals. Using the ink washes was where this picture was really going to start coming together, and actually it really came out quite well. I'm very happy with the final result, but in order to get to that final result, I had to work out how I was going to do the lighting for the scene. Obviously, it being in a cave, it should be naturally really dark without any lighting, and even if these two explorers had brought some lighting with them, it certainly wouldn't be enough to light the entire cave. So I figured, well, perhaps these crystals are really, really refractive. They reflect and refract the light all over the place, scatter it all around the room. So I wanted to create a very scattered light effect within the room, and almost as though the room itself were glowing, like the crystals were glowing in some way without them actually glowing. So whatever little light is getting into this room is being reflected and refracted around this room so much that there is perhaps there's enough light to certainly see by and certainly illuminate some areas beyond the cave, so that we as the viewer aren't sat in complete darkness. The rocks in front of us actually have some light and shadow, some distinctive form to them. The lighting on the back of the wall in the cave with the crystals, again, I wanted to create that very scattered light effect, as though not only is the light hitting the walls from many different directions, but it's also being cast back off in many different directions as well, because, as I say, the walls are possibly encrusted in these crystals as well. So it was a lot of fun kind of working out how that light was going to affect the inside of the room compared to the outside of the room, where we're sat basically in the darkness observing the overall scene. There were two minor mistakes whilst I was making this particular picture. At one point, when I was doing the line work, I rested my hand on top of a piece of the wet ink and smudged it slightly. That's at the top of the larger crystal on the right. You can see right at the top there, I've actually smudged the ink slightly. And then right at the end, after I'd finished recording and started editing the video, I was looking at the picture and I realized there are two crystals in the background that I never actually used any of the ink washes or anything on. It's still just clean paper, and it's very obvious once you've noticed it. So, you know, thank me later for that, for pointing that out. That's totally fine. You may also laugh at my mistake. Whilst I'm talking about the washes, I did the washing section of this picture in the same way as I normally do, with one with a very light wash and one with a much darker wash. And then where I change things up a little bit with this picture is, rather than using just the black as the next stage, I used the black and a sort of a mid between the two darks, between the black and the darker grey. To do this, I used the black brush, or the black ink, as much as I could in the black areas until it started fading out too much to really be called black, and then started using it on the inner areas where I didn't want so much black. So I wanted to keep most of the black towards the front and the side, it's particularly the right hand side, fading it out slightly as I went round, so it kind of, the whole scene spirals in on itself. So it starts right up close next to the viewer, and then you follow the wall up on the right across the top, then back down and through the path in the center of the picture. And I used not only the line art to create this spiral, but the amount of black that I was using throughout the picture progressively decreases as you go around the spiral, to add to the feeling of this being a large environment, and the perspective and the lighting changing as we get closer in towards the main subject area in the center. And that has pretty much brought us to the end of this video and the end of this prompt for Inktober 2018. I am now posting all these images over on my Instagram account, so if you want to go and follow me over there, the link is down in the description below. If you have enjoyed this video, please go ahead, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and as always guys, take care, and I will see you next time.